Welcome back, Bee Shifters, to this edition of Bee Shifter Podcast. I'm your host, John Vance. Thanks for listening today. If you like it, please subscribe and tell a friend. On today's episode, we have Michelle Garrido Sutton. Michelle is our editor-in-chief of Bee Shifter Quarterly. And if you see anything on print or written from Bee Shifter, chances are Michelle has had at least some editing on that and helps guide our words so they're coherent for you. We are firefighters after all. We'll talk about how she got her start in the fire publication business, how she was fortunate enough to work with the legendary James Page, how she connected with the Brunacinis, and Nick Brunacini is here as well. And we'll discuss how his article that originally was published in FireRescue on fire attack morphed into the great writings that we get from Nick today. Also wrap it up by telling you how you can submit an article to Bee Shifter if you'd like to become a writer as well, or if you have topic ideas. It's a fun episode. Appreciate you being here today for this edition of Bee Shifter. I don't need to constantly be like a pilot on an airplane. We were cruising.
Quagmire.
We were cruising at Giggity. Both Giggity at the same time.
Giggity.
We are with Nick and Michelle Garrido Sutton, and we are going to talk a little bit about the printed word today. And Nick and Michelle go back a little ways to FireRescue magazine. Michelle is the editor-in-chief of Bee Shifter Quarterly. Is that your official title, or did I just make that up?
It fluctuates, but that works for now.
All right. So how did you get into writing? And you don't have an emergency services background, but you are as much of a firefighter, I feel like, anybody else I work with, because you've been immersed in the business so long. So how did you get started on this ride?
You know, I always say I'm not in the fire service. I'm sort of a product of it, just because I've been involved with the fire service for so long. My first foray into firefighter EMS publishing was right out of college. I got a job as an entry-level editor at a now defunct publication called Emergency, which was primarily EMS, paramedics, and that was published by Hare Publications. They also published Police Magazine, and they sold medical equipment, and they produced this really bizarre book called Death Row that was vignettes of all the death row inmates in the United States. So I worked there for about a year and a half. That was based in Carlsbad, California. And right after that year and a half stint with Emergency, I ended up getting a job in pet publishing. And I worked for Fancy Publications, working on Cat Fancy. I was the managing editor of Reptiles magazine for a while. And through that job, I came to know a graphic designer who worked for Jems, which is the sister publication to FireRescue. And they were looking for a managing editor. And I was all over it, because it was in Carlsbad, about 1.3 miles from my house. They wanted a managing editor to work on Jems and FireRescue both. I got the job and was working on, like I said, on both Jems and FireRescue, but really had an affinity for the fire side of things. Really got along with the writers, that whole industry just kind of felt right for me. And so I eventually got moved over to only work on FireRescue as the managing editor. The editor at the time left, and they brought in a couple people to try to fill that position. But I was really kind of stepping up into that role more and traveling more and meeting people. And again, just really it felt right and it fit for me. So eventually I got the job, I got the promotion. They started me out as deputy editor, and then after about a year of that, I moved up to editor. And initially, we weren't a very popular publication. Nobody wanted to write for us. I would call people and they would hang up. And I remember it was Steve Kidd, the extrication expert who did the whole Carbusters series. He agreed to write for us. And after he came on board, everyone else kind of fell into place. And that, from there, we just built this great team of writers and editorial board members, and it just kind of went from there.
About what year was that?
That was 2001, early 2001. I think I started there in like January 7th of 2001.
So for those of us, just real quick primer on because you read the masthead. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Masthead. And you see these titles. So what's the difference between like managing editor or editor-in-chief? Who's in charge there?
Okay, the editor is the direction of the publication, and they're kind of the figurehead, and the buck stops with that editor. The managing editor generally works to facilitate production between the graphic designers, photographers, and the editorial team. So they really work in those two worlds and facilitate the publication of the magazine. They make sure that it gets to the printer on time and that everything is moving along as it should. So it's almost like a project management role with editorial thrown in. And I loved that role. Every time I've been a managing editor, I kind of thrived in that. It was a little stressful, little pressure, and I think I performed well kind of under the gun. So I enjoyed that. But in the end, you have a lot more creative control and the ability to kind of promote your vision, I guess. I don't know, when you're the editor, you get to meet way more people, you travel more, you go to more conferences, and you really get a feel for what you think the readers are going to enjoy and what's going to benefit them. And I loved that part of it. I never felt more creative and motivated than right after I came back from a good conference, because you met the people who were reading it and you found out what they wanted to do, what they wanted to read about, what they wanted to write. That was a great part of it for me.
You've had the opportunity to work with some legends in our service, and one of those was James Page.
Yes.
So he was your boss, right?
No, technically Jim worked for me.
Oh, wow.
So
that's weird.
When I first came on board at FireRescue and Jems, he had already sold Jems publications to Harcourt, and he did not stay on as, publisher or editor, but he stayed on in an ancillary role. And he wrote a column for me, and he used to love it. He used to get tickled when we would travel together and people would say, "Oh, are you Jim's assistant? How does that work?" I'd be like, "No, technically he works for me," because he kind of did. But he was a tremendous mentor. I learned so much from him, not only about fire and EMS, but just about how to develop yourself and keep an open mind and be gracious. And I really enjoyed working with him, traveling with him. He was very inspirational.
Did you work on Magic of 3 a.m. with him?
Ish.
Okay.
So
good book, by the way.
Great book. And I am mentioned in it because there was one of his columns that he wrote where he mentioned that I was kind of nudging him to get his column in. But that was a compilation of the column that he wrote for us every month. And they just decided these are gold and we need to put them in a book. And that's I still have copies of that. It's just fun to go back and flip through it and just pick a column and read it, because he was just so smart about things and just very engaging. When you would travel with him and he would spend time in the booth, people would come up and they would seem so starstruck to be, standing in front of their hero or this legend in EMS and the fire service. And he would break out into a great big smile and shake their hand and ask them all about themselves. And they would walk away feeling so much better than they did before. And that was a gift to see, because nobody does that. Very few people leave others feeling better than, but yeah.
And James Page, for those of you who aren't up on this, was a battalion chief at the LA County Fire Department and a technical advisor when they were filming the TV show Emergency. As a matter of fact, he wrote some episodes. The character Johnny Gage was actually supposed to be named Jim Page after him. When he found that out, he went to the producers of Emergency and said, "No way can you do this, because the chiefs already hate me.
Right.
And if you do this, you're going to end my career at the LA County Fire Department." So they changed it from Jim Page to Johnny Gage, kind of close, but those people that know. And then he left LA County at some point and went to South Carolina.
I think it was
North Carolina, and started their EMS system there, because at that point there were wrecker drivers that had rescue cards, correct? And not an EMT program. So you have a rescue card, which was basically like a first aid class, and they would crowbar people out of vehicles. Well, he started a standard there to get people certified as EMTs. Kind of got ran out of the state because a lot of those providing that service didn't know how to read. Mm-hmm. And because they were going to have some mandatory testing tied to their EMT, mm-hmm. they weren't happy with that. And then he went back out west, got his law degree, and then became a lawyer. Am I getting all that correct?
You are.
All right. Just a fascinating guy. Hero of the fire service, who introduced you to another hero of the fire service.
Yes. So I was, the newly promoted editor at FireRescue, and he kept telling me, you got to meet Bruno. You got to meet Bruno. And I was like, okay, name the time, let's do it. The opportunity didn't come up at a conference where I could meet Bruno, but he ended up coming to Oceanside Fire Department to give a lecture. And so he said, oh, he's going to be in Oceanside, just, drive there and meet him. And I went there. I had never seen Bruno, and I've told this story before, but I was looking for Clint Eastwood. You hear people talk about him and you expect this larger than life, cigarette hanging out of the mouth, tall, imposing, very serious person, because he was so enamored and respected and kind of revered. And so I showed up at the auditorium and I asked this guy I knew, like, hey, which one's Bruno? And he kept pointing, like, up there. He kept pointing to the stage. And I saw what I thought was the sound guy. It was this little dude in Dockers and a Hawaiian shirt. And I was like, where? He's like, right there. I was like, where? He's like, there. And he grabbed my hand and moved it to point it right at Bruno. And I was like, what? What? Okay. And so I went up and I introduced myself. And he was very polite, very gracious, but was busy. And he was like, oh, kid, yeah, nice to meet you. And I told him that Jim had sent me. And he was like, oh, we'll talk later. So after he did his talk, I went up and talked to him again. And he, again, was very polite and, oh, yeah, who are you? What are you? So you're working with Jim? Like, what are you doing? And, oh, yeah, maybe we'll see each other again sometime. And it was just a real quick meeting. And then shortly after that, we were at a conference. Jim and I had gone to this conference, and Bruno was there, and we got to spend some more time with him there. And I really liked him. He was everything you heard, funny, smart, engaging, and went home. We needed a fire attack column for FireRescue. And so I was like, I'm going to ask Alan Brunacini to write my fire attack column. Because again, I don't know enough to be completely intimidated. And I had been hung up on, I'd been rejected. Didn't offend me. So I called him and said, hey, we're doing this fire attack column. Would you be interested in doing that for us? And he was like, I can't. But you need to talk to my son, Nick. And so I called Nick, and he graciously agreed to write our fire attack column, which he did for how long?
That's not what happened.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
It is.
What's Nick's version?
I get this call. In fact, I was a BC. I thought this was sooner than 90. I became a BC in 97. I thought it was right after that, but maybe.
No, it was about, because before, when I started at FireRescue in 2001, and before you wrote the column, Steve Pegram from Ohio wrote the column for a good year or so.
Well, whatever it was, you called, I was a BC. Hey, your dad gave me your number. That was the first strike. Okay.
I don't remember him rejecting
and
me.
I need, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, thanks for the offer, but, I don't know what the hell I'd write about, and yada, 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 yada.
I don't remember this rejection.
I
blocked it.
I clearly do. And then I remember I came back to work the next week, and you called again and said, I'm blah, 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 blah. And I said, no, I'm still not. Please, I'm not even thinking about it.
Boy, I was persistent. Good for me.
And then that day we had a fire at a place that made pallets, right? So we had a camera in our rig. We take command. We do our thing. I was a huge foam head. So I ordered our foam rig, and like in 30 minutes, we extinguished a pallet fire. It had pictures of it, the whole deal. I thought, this is perfect, going through our thing. Tactical. Garrido calls back.
So
this is third time you called and said, hey, come on, I need somebody, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, Well, I got some excellent pictures of some fires. So I wrote the first one then. That was kind of where it started, and then it just, from there it was, I was doomed. I could not escape once they had me.
He was drunk on his power.
I was drunk on my writing.
On your writing.
On my words, the vowels. Yeah.
Were you writing before that, Nick?
When was it? This was 2000.
You started writing for me about 2002, 2003.
Yeah, we had done Fire Command.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had written I had started writing, and then what happened is during Fire Command, producing that book is, I don't know, 9 months, a year into it. It's a textbook. I mean, how much fun can that be? So I would get back, I'd sit down to write, and we would have had a call. So I'd started writing. In fact, in Fire Command, I started writing about calls. And so here's an example, and blah, blah, blah. So I started turning it into something it wasn't. Pulled it out, and I thought, I'm going to keep doing this. I prefer this over here, well, that became B-Shifter. So there was enough stuff sitting in that pile of Fire Command scraps that it served as the first draft of the B-Shifter book. So at that time, I'd probably written I was still screwing around with B-Shifter when I started writing for Garrido at FireRescue. So those two things kind of happened concurrently. And the fact that I went to work writing a monthly column kept me writing. So, I mean, that's the reason I kept writing and writing, because the book was done. There was no reason to keep doing anything. I mean, we were doing command safety next and other stuff. But so it kind of became, I don't know. At first it became a hobby, and then later on it became a chore.
So when did it go from writing about fire attack to staring at the sun, which was nothing like it in the fire service at all? So FireRescue would come into the fire station, the mailman would drop it off, and myself and a captain that worked at the station, he'd be in the front watch office, I'd be in my office, and we would yell through the walls about stuff that Nick had written about. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's going after gun control. Oh, I mean, it was the greatest thing because most fire service publication stuff is technical, boring, very politically correct, because we got to be in order to keep our jobs. But this was out there. This was something completely different.
We wanted it to be a great magazine that just happened to be for firefighters. We wanted it to be educational and entertaining. And it really is a testament to the company I was working for that they allowed us to go in that direction and allowed us to just be a little confrontational, be still educational, still valuable for that. But we really wanted it to be something that people looked forward to receiving. We wanted it to be easy on the eyes. And I think we did that, but I don't know. I think Nick wrote Fire Attack for a year and a half max and just didn't want to do it anymore. He was burnt out on it. So he very nicely put me in touch with another writer to take over Fire Attack. And he said, I think you broached the idea of doing the column, the staring column.
No, what it was is you guys were doing, I was finished. I'd written, like Garrido said, 24 of these Fire Attack columns. So he said, there's nothing else to talk about, man. This is, put water on it. It'll go out eventually. So there was an issue. It was like the Christmas issue. And everybody wanted a Christmas story from every author. Tell us your Christmas story. Well, I had written this article 1,000,000 years ago that appeared in a used apparatus fire journal about your first fire. Well, it just happened to be the Christmas tree thing. So I thought, well, shit, this is easy. I can dust this off, take about 5 minutes doing what I need to do, and they're going to pay me for this one next. So that's the one I sent to Garrido.
And it was brilliant.
Is the Christmas tree. Well, and I think what happened is all the boss people read that and thought, oh, that's quaint and cute, and look what he did, and then blah, 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 and thought, yeah, he can write about this kind of stuff in the future.
I don't think they knew when we were talking about it, like, oh, we're going to have Nick do this just kind of fire service related, personal interests, reflections. I don't think they knew some of the directions he was going to go. But
I would say most of the directions they did not know.
I know that they loved the idea of having a Brunacini name that we kept in the magazine. That was important to them, obviously. And everyone loved it. Or they hated it. But either way, they were reading it.
And so quickly, it got out of the Christmas tree thing pretty rapidly. Like you said, it came into mostly just taking a longer look at ourselves and not being so serious about it, that we're so special. And yeah. In fact, a lot of that's bullshit. You think, no, that ain't who we are. This is who we are right over here. This is why we join. And there ain't anything wrong with that. It just has to be supervised a little closer. You shouldn't blow up the apparatus bay with a potato cannon. That happens in every fire department. Oh, it doesn't happen here. Well, you're full of shit. You're just an idiot, and they don't do it around you.
I think it was the potato cannon column that I was just committed. Like, I found that so funny. I just couldn't turn it. It had to be in every issue. I had to. There's so little that you really get a kick out of reading and editing when you're working for a fire service journal and you're not a firefighter, and then you get something like that coming along. You're engaged. You're into it. And I just couldn't wait to see what he was going to do next and how. And I always I always took it to the publisher to get him to sign off on it, because didn't want to get myself in trouble. I guess there was something in there that was a little bit too racy, but I think it just worked. It was very successful. FireRescue was the right magazine for it. It was the right time for it. People wanted something like that. It doesn't all have to be, hose lines and ladder throws, because firefighters are more than just firefighters. They're humans who want entertainment.
The Christmas tree story is brilliant.
Yeah.
It should be a movie, and I'll put a link in the show notes so people can find it, because
Right.
it is the greatest Christmas story ever told.
I think we've republished it in B-Shifter a few times.
Yeah.
Anytime it falls in December, I feel like we need to put the Christmas tree column in there.
Well, that's what they would just start running it at Christmas time. And it was crazy. You'd be doing whatever you're doing out in the world, and 30% of the people come up and ask you something. You think, okay, this is going to be about on deck, or you son of a bitch, you don't believe in an ops section, or whatever it was. And it was, hey, man, that Christmas tree thing. See, again, you did the same thing, didn't you? You and your brother had a fist fight over burning the tree.
But this was a story that we read to our son every Christmas. We would always just read Christmas stories.
Gather around, kids.
And Oh Christmas Tree is one we read, because it's a little heartwarming. Two brothers coming together to do their father's bidding. Well, and it was all okay in the end, No one died.
There's a breakfast at Denny's,
I love that, because you need sustenance before you burn down the fire chief's house.
And I think that was the hook, because they almost burnt down Alan Brunacini's house.
That's awesome. There was one point in time that you would open up FireRescue, and it was Nick, John, sometimes Alan, Steve Kreis, somebody else from Phoenix. I mean,
John
it was
Hinton.
it was like a who's who of
Pelton.
Yeah, I mean, and they were great. That was just a great time to read that magazine, because at that particular moment in time, we were all trying to be the Phoenix Fire Department.
Right.
We were trying to figure out what magic they had going on there. I mean, we knew it was the boss.
But that was a complaint, too. People said it's too Phoenix heavy. Especially at the time, there was a lot of, it probably still exists, a lot of East Coast versus West Coast, BS. But I was just looking for people who were quasi-literate, knew what they were talking about. And I always looked for the people that were into it, that wanted to do it, that were committed to producing a column for, whether it was for the greater good or for their own self-actualization or whatever. But I'm really proud of what we did at FireRescue. I don't regret any of it. I learned so much professionally and personally in that role, from Jim Page, from Bruno. I got to work with Frank Brannigan. I got to work with some really smart, interesting people. And in the end, it brought me here, The job I have now with B-Shifter is the best job I've ever had.
Well, I am going to give a plug to both B-Shifter, the book, and Random Hallucinations, because they're both They both capture what was written. If somebody wants to know what those articles were all about from Nick, read those two books because
it's Bee Shifter and Staring into the Sun.
Staring into the Sun. Yeah.
Bee Shifter came out first, and then we released the columns that he ran in FireRescue as the Staring into the Sun column. Those are a book, and they are perfect. They're
good
perfect
stuff.
for a bathroom.
perfect for a
It's a
bathroom.
perfect bathroom book. They're 4 or 5 pages long. You get through your business. You're done. You get a chuckle.
You're on a plane and you don't want to read the great American novel. You just want something a little lighthearted, but always poignant. Always kind of have a message.
I loved it. So we're all sitting here because certain events happen in our life, and I always imagine this like Black Friday event. I don't even know if we ever talked about this, but we're like everyone got fired.
Yeah.
So what happened there? Because you guys were all working there, and then suddenly it was over.
Well, John, I got fired.
No.
Yeah. And, with time and perspective, I think they were right to fire me, probably. I had reached a point where I was a little burnt out and kind of not willing to play ball. What I think one of the catalysts was a column that Nick wrote that
Yes, that was one of the catalysts.
there was a large fire service organization that took offense to it, and it wasn't only that column. I just really was done, and
We all get to that point,
right? And my
sometimes.
boss, looking back, had been extremely patient with me, and did what he could to try to get me to, what do they call it, like walk with Jesus and kind of get in line. But I just really believed what I wanted to do with the magazine was correct. And with the column that Nick wrote that people were offended, I wasn't going to throw him under the bus. He didn't do anything wrong. Our publisher had signed off on the column. This group was offended by it. I almost feel as if they wanted me to say, yes, he was bad and it's horrible, and to just, throw myself at their mercy. And I didn't feel that was the right thing to do, and I didn't do it.
That was like 2005, 2006?
2006.
2006. So you were like one of the first people to get canceled over using a word that everyone gets canceled for now. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, that wasn't the only thing. It was one of the things. And I don't think my boss's assessment and his decision to fire me was necessarily incorrect. And, no harm, no foul. And it's true. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah. And Nick and Bruno told me, you're going to work with us. We're going to start a business. We're going to do this thing. And we're going to start a magazine. And you're going to work with us. And I was like, okay, let me know when. And
so that's how did that all? So you left FireRescue. Mm-hmm. Nick was done at FireRescue simultaneously.
And, I honestly, being a Brunacini, and I don't think they would have canned him. I think you made the decision to leave at that point.
Oh, they asked me to stay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm thinking, no, you can't. The deal's with her, not with you. So that's not going to happen. And one of the reasons she's leaving is because of me. They're like, well, no, it's different, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, okay. So I left too.
And then Bee Shifter.
Yeah, I just kind of was a freelance writer and doing other projects, some of them in emergency services for a couple of years. And then they made the decision they were going to create a magazine. And I remember Bruno saying, I want a magazine where we can say whatever we want because it's the truth and because it's important to say it. And what was that, 2008? We had that meeting?
Well, what happened, yes, that was 2008. And Blue Card the online version was rough drafted out already. So there were people going through that, and we were tweaking it at the time. So, and we had already determined that, okay, this is eventually going to evolve into a certification-based training program. So we're going to use the magazine to deliver the CE piece of it. So that was kind of the idea behind it. Well, we needed to build the website. So ahead of that, I think it was in 2004, Don Abbott asked my brother and I to hook up with a web guy he was working with that was building a hazmat simulator for FDNY. and they needed the verbiage for hazmat calls and what you would, when you say this word, what action does that cause? So we're kind of going through these things. Well, so we get to working with this web guy, and, we had been there a couple times, and he said, well, you guys have contributed to this thing a lot and really made it better than it was going to be. And he says, I got to pay you. And no, we don't. We're doing Abbott a favor, and no, we're not interested. Pay it forward, buddy. So he's, okay. So at the same time, I thought, well, do you build websites? And he says, yeah, I build your website. I said, okay, build us the B-Shifter website. This is what we want. So it was Henry Ring, and he built the first B-Shifter. And that was kind of the deal. And what we were going to do is that website was going to evolve into the magazine, and then the Blue Card program and the rest. So this is before we ever started on the Blue Card piece. We knew what we were going to do with Blue Card, but we hadn't sat down and actually started to. So just because Henry built the first B-Shifter when it was time to do the online, we sat down with him, and he built basically the Blue Card system that we use today online. So that's where we met Henry. And so in 2004, we started this website, and it was of the times. So it had different areas and tabs you could get under, and we would put like apparatus art up, and it was your typical something a B-Shifter would do. And it also had forums. So that kind of became a thing after my dad retired. So there became this little civil war that went on, and it became more known for that. Well, once that went away, that's when we delved into Blue Card at that point. Thought, well, okay, see, and by then, 2006, my dad and brother were retired. I stayed till 2009. Well, a lot of that happened. I was still working at Phoenix. So I'd already gone through the shit with Garrido at FireRescue. And so I thought this would be interesting. And, the United States of America is a great country. And I would remind the people who would come in to counsel me that I had a First Amendment right. And then, yes, that's what City Legal keeps telling us. Yes, they do. So once we got through that, we went back to work, did the Blue Card thing. And then we called Garrido once the program was up, and we started, well, even before, she started looking at stuff on the website and editing some of the things there. Then we had a meeting where we were getting ready to do a set of things. Like I said, the online program was already laid out, and we're going to start the magazine now. And at the time, we wanted to do an online magazine. We wanted it to be digital. So this is like 2008, 2009. And we were ahead of ourselves because we wanted to like embed. So you would read a magazine, a paper magazine, and there'd be a little square call out of a picture. Well, we wanted to go digital, and then you hit that picture and it just rolls the video. That technology wasn't very far along yet. So the first issue of the magazine, and you had to download it, was like 1.5 gigabytes in size. It was absolutely enormous. It took like an hour to download it all. And then your computer wasn't fast enough. You had to have a supercomputer to make it work. So our digital idea ended up turning into a PDF sooner than later, because that was something you could manage and do. And, you could get everything out of it. And you could embed video in them and do all the rest. And, well, you come to find out the video wasn't that big a deal. Nobody watched them. It was a pain in the neck, and so all the rest. But still, we kind of went through those first few itinerations of the thing before we really kind of hit our stride with, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is the way the thing's going to get pushed out every quarter.
Is there an archive anywhere with that original V-Shifter?
Yeah.
When it was a forum, when it was more of the forum-based,
forum.
and after your dad retired in that period? Because you had to like blow it up at some point, right? Like
yeah,
you just took it down.
And you took it down.
Yeah.
Oh, we took the forum down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said, no, we can't keep doing this, man. This is going to turn
spiraled.
It was
Yeah.
once again, though, like daily viewing. I mean, it was so crazy.
Yeah, it was out of. And nobody would believe it. You know, they did what to Alan Brunacini? This was blah, blah, blah. No, that's just ridiculous. That couldn't have happened. And okay, whatever.
City legals confiscating computers. I mean, that was on there. I mean, it was.
Oh yeah, no, it was. It was a civil war within our fire department. There was, and most the members of our organization had no clue why it was. Well, you know, it's politics. That's what it was.
Was there was that article in, was it the Phoenix
New Sun Times?
Yeah, the New Sun Times.
The New Times.
That
New
was
Times.
kind of around that time.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
that's when it. Yeah, that's when it ran.
That article was kind of shed light on what had happened, and then the forums were just a place for people to rage and.
Well, what happened is the forums pulled the newspaper in. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when you talk to the people that run that newspaper, today it continues to be the most read article that they have ever published.
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. It was.
No, today there are still people pull it up. When you look at their website and archived articles, it's in the top of it.
Well, when you Google your father's name, that's one of the top hits.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, that's. There are people's names in there I would not want to be them. Yeah. I mean, it's just like you said, it keeps coming up. It never goes away.
Yeah, and it's a big article. I mean, no one would write an article today like that because it's half a paper.
Well, and she was pissed,
and she did but it was so well done, and so I think it was very fair and balanced.
Yeah, I do too.
She started calling me and saying I need blah blah blah. I said no. So like about the third time, I said, "Who gave you my number?" And she says, I'll tell you who gave it to me. Is somebody called me anonymously, and I know who it was because I know who he is. And they said that you did X, Y, and Z with this and that. And she says, and I researched it, and in 3 minutes found out it was a lie. Really? My representation called you and told you this? That's it. All right, what do you want to know? Yeah. So we talked about other stuff. It was like the person who, I said, no, he's a friend of mine. He used to be. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. It's politics. So, and that's what he told me that later on. He said, oh, come on, man. Get over it. It's just politics, motherfucker.
B Shifter evolves into a quarterly journal.
It evolves into the Hazard Zone Quarterly. And the initial intention was that it was going to support and promote the Blue Card program. They were going to be a synergistic experience. You know, you did Blue Card, you read B Shifter, you got more information, and they were supposed to B Shifter was kind of going to support Blue Card. But that just didn't happen. They ended up operating as separate entities for years, where B Shifter was just kind of its own thing on the website, sort of related to Blue Card, and there was some Blue Card stuff in it, but it was kind of ill-defined. It didn't have its identity for a long time. And we, produced some great material, and there was a lot of excellent content in B Shifter. But in the past year, we've had some changes, and now B Shifter is really all about the Blue Card instructor, the Blue Card program, getting that information out there, updates. It's the link to your CE content. And, I was telling you guys earlier today, our previous issues were 50, 60 pages. The last two have been 71 pages and 91 pages. So it's getting bigger and better because we're kind of cross-pollinating with Blue Card and B Shifter. So
the new B Shifter is out, by the way, so another link will be to that.
And the new B Shifter on the cover has the mural that's painted on the side of the new Alan V. Brunacini Command Training Center here in Phoenix. So it's worth looking at just to see how that turned out.
Well, Michelle, you are talented because I look at what you did with that fire rescue group, Chase Sargent, all those guys that Steve Kidd, all those people that were writing for you at the time. And I know through dealing with you, there's a lot of coaching that you have to do for lunkhead firefighters who, and I'm not saying those guys are lunkheads. I'm saying I am, to get us to come in with some kind of product. You do a wonderful job with that.
Thank you.
And it's very, there's a feel to it. There's a texture to it. And you do a really nice job managing all that and
I will say
making it
at
coherent.
FireRescue, I had such a great team that I worked with. You know, the team of editors that I worked with were very smart and dedicated and hardworking and creative, and you know, they were a good reason for how great the magazine looked and the articles in it. So, you know, props to them. They were really integral to that.
But when we look at B Shifter, you're a one-person show,
I
right?
am. Party of one. Yeah, you know, thank you for saying that. I have fun doing it most of the time. Not every day is a cakewalk, but I believe in the product. I believe in getting these messages out there. I love so much the people that I'm working with. I respect what they're doing. I don't know. I'm the luckiest girl in the world.
Oh, we're lucky to have
Yeah,
you
just
shepherding our words and getting them out to the people.
everyone is so kind. The team that we work with, everyone is so kind. They want to do their best, and that makes the proof is in the pudding. You know, it comes through when you've got articles in a magazine that people want to write, when they have something they want to talk about. It really comes through.
If somebody wants to write for B Shifter, what should they do? Can somebody submit?
They absolutely can. They can send an email to Michelle with 2 L's at bshifter.com and let me know what you have in mind. We're looking for, you know, shorter articles now, nothing like between, you know, 1,000 words, maximum, you know, 2,200, 2,500 words, especially anything that focuses on interesting things that your department might be doing with Blue Card.
Yeah, any kind of fire department operation thing you're interested in. I mean, that you don't have to be a blue card fire department to submit either.
No, we've got people that aren't certified Blue Card instructors writing for us. I mean, the Blue Card content is obviously Blue Card, certified Blue Card ICs, but again, the goal is to create an informative magazine that's also entertaining, and we have a lot of entertaining stuff in B Shifter. We've got Nick's Random Hallucinations column. We've got Johnny Peters out of Houston writing his column, The 360, which is always a good time. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think that we are creating something that's not tough to get through, that you want to read it, you want to flip through, whether you're on your iPad or, you know, on your computer, your phone, that you want to here and there read an article, take what you can from it. I love hearing from people that enjoy an article. They want to get in touch with the author. They want to kind of implement that idea. That's, you know, that's the paycheck right there. Is we did something someone appreciates. And most of the time, people aren't going to let you know unless they're pissed. You know, you don't usually hear from people unless they're mad about something. But we consistently get positive feedback, and that's the best part.
Well, you do a great job. Everybody,
Thank you.
they're putting together. It's, I'm proud to be a part of it. And it's just so weird. I mean, for me personally, to go from sitting in a fire station in Granger, Indiana, waiting for FireRescue to come in and being a fanboy of you two. Mm-hmm. And then like now I'm sitting in the Alan V. Brunacini Command Training Center in Phoenix, Arizona, doing a podcast with you. It's you two are a couple of my heroes. Seriously. So this is just crazy.
This building, you know, you can't see it on a podcast. It's beautiful. It's impressive. And it is the culmination of a dream. I feel like Bruno would be so proud of this space and everything that's going to happen here. And really a testament to Nick and his family for finishing it and putting in so many long hours and making it happen. And no one went crazy or died.
Nick polished the brass on engine 1 in preparation for us to be here.
Oh, it looks good.
Yep.
Engine 1. Like,
yeah, we're going to be okay.
It's worth a trip out here just to see Engine 1. I mean,
Well, I'm sure we'll talk to you more, but thank you so much for being with us.
I'm happy to be here. This is my first podcast experience.
Well, it was a great
I mean, I listen
experience,
to a lot of podcasts, like murder shows and things like that.
No one died here today.
No.
Oh. All right.
Thanks, John.
Well, thank you, John Vance and Garrido.
And Mr. Brunacini. Nick Brunacini.
And that wraps up this B Shifter. Thanks for listening today. Again, please subscribe if you enjoyed it and tell your friends. We have extensive show notes, so some of the things that we talked about today, including the Christmas tree story, you can find links in the show notes to those. And you can share those with your friends as well. If you have any comments, please feel free to pass them along. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. and please be safe.